Hello everyone, welcome once again to another edition of Sports Etc. Today we're talking with Al Tuning with Eagle Towing, and we first of all thank you for being a sponsor. We really appreciate that.
No problem. Appreciate it.
And Al's got some NASCAR stories you want to talk about. Before that, we want to delve into Eagle Towing. All right, I should say Eagle Towing and Recovery. Let me get that straight. With regard to towing, we've seen advances in all different fields. One would think, what kind of advances would you have in towing? But you were telling me that one of the biggest advances or one of the biggest costs is when you first started out or when your dad started out, the cost of a truck to now. Tell me about it.
My father opened up in 1964 right here in Fredericksburg. Of course, it was under a different name at that time because all of your tow companies were affiliated with service stations, and he as well had gas stations.
Yeah.
So the name, of course, was different. But yeah, the first truck he ever bought, 1964, was a 62 Ford with a homemade body on it, and it was about $1,200.
Nowadays?
Nowadays, to buy a brand new truck, like an F650 rollback, like the one we have, to buy it brand new, you're looking at about $125,000.
So I understand, obviously different advances, but what are some of the major advances that they have made with tow trucks? Why is that truck so expensive?
The biggest advancement, of course, is all of the emissions and the technology that goes into it. But of course, back then they didn't have the flatbeds or the rollbacks that people call. But nowadays, with most of your all-wheel drives, you've got to have the flatbeds. You can't tow a car conventionally. The plastic bumpers. You have to have a wheel lift. You have to have a flatbed. They didn't know what those were back in the 60s.
Right, exactly.
So the technology, of course, has just kept up with the times. And with technology comes cost.
Exactly. And of course, you are 24 hours, right?
We are.
540-834-3500 for Eagle Towing. Al, folks know about, a disabled vehicle. You're going to pick up a disabled vehicle or they've been in a crash. What are some of the other things that Eagle Towing and Recovery do?
Well, pretty much nowadays we do it all. From lockouts to jump starts. A lot of people don't understand what recovery is.
Right.
In our industry, a lot of people consider recovery as in what they call now asset recovery, which is repossessions.
Okay, right.
With our name, that is not what we do. We specialize in off-road recovery. If you wreck your vehicle, it's upside down over an embankment, it's in the trees. That is what we refer to as recovery in our industry with our aspect of it.
Are you called upon sometimes, like a police department, if there's like a car in a lake? I mean, is that do they ever call? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we deal with Spotsylvania Sheriff's Department, with Virginia State Police, all the municipalities around here.
Right.
Yeah, we deal with it all quite often.
And you and I talked a while back about being on the Sheriff's Department's list of, because they have a list that they go by. And
right.
There's different. You're on that list.
We are.
Yeah, and we were also. I was talking about that's kind of finicky because if people, the tow truck companies know when they're supposed to go.
Yeah. I mean, everybody kind of monitors where everybody's at. You know how the list runs. You know, and a lot of the guys, will text or email or call and say, "Hey, we just got ours," so you're up next, or something like that. I call it, honor among thieves.
Right,
really.
Right, exactly. You heard, I was talking to Pritt Motorsports about the camaraderie of drivers. Do you have that? I mean, because it's it's a business. You're in it to make money. What is the relationship with other tow truck companies around the area? I'm sure you have some good relationships and some bad, right?
It's just like any business. Exactly. You have the guys that you work with well. Some you work with, but maybe not as well as others, or there's that little bit of tension. But yeah, it's just like any other business. There's ones you get along great with, others that you work with, but not maybe consider friends.
Now you also, of course, are out at Dominion Raceway, and what are your response? Obviously, when there's a crash, you get called upon, but you have to kind of, when you go out to the scene of a crash at Dominion Raceway, I guess the first thing you've got to do is kind of figure out because I know there was one involving the modified series, as a matter of fact, that there was kind of a car up on the other car. So, I mean, when you first pull up, you got to kind of, in your mind, think of how am I going to get this car off, and is that what you're doing?
Yeah, that, in our business, that's pretty much second nature. If we work a crash, even out here on the highway, it's the same way. You pull up, you trained yourself basically to evaluate the situation and figure out what you got to do to quickly and safely clear the scene.
Right.
So even at the racetrack, it's pretty much the same same thing.
Right. Now, when you're out on a crash out on the highway, how much input does the police have as far as, trying to help you out? Because, like I say, if you're at an intersection or whatever, you want to get that cleaned up as quick as possible. Do the police pressure you, or do they try to make suggestions of how you can get it cleaned up quicker?
Most of them won't make any suggestions because they pretty much know their end of the business. We know ours.
Well, that's good.
We all work together. Same with fire and rescue.
Right.
Everybody's there to do a job, but they really don't give you a lot of input because it's a total different aspect of what they're used to.
That's got to be important for you to go out on a scene like that, knowing that you're not going to have to, you've got enough worries or enough, problems as far as trying to figure out how to get the crash cleaned up, but also not to have that extra worry about, okay, this police officer or this guy's going to, give me a hard time or give me a suggestion. Right. You can just go do your job.
Yeah, pretty much that's the way it is. Everybody, on a crash scene, you've got fire, you've got EMS, you've got law enforcement, be it state police or county, and then you've got your towing, guys. Everybody's there to do a job, and they work together, but as a unit, but it's still kind of your separate division.
Right, exactly. We're going to take a break. We're talking with Al Tuning with Eagle Towing and Recovery. When we come back, I told you he's got some NASCAR stories. We're going to talk about that when we continue on this edition of Sports Etc. Stay with us.
If you're broke down and need a tow, call the professionals at Eagle Towing and Recovery, 540-834-3500. The Tuning family has been serving the area for 50 years. Eagle Towing and Recovery does local and long-distance towing, off-road recovery, and lockouts. Eagle Towing and Recovery, 540-834-3500. The name to remember the next time you need a tow. Eagle Towing and Recovery also services Dominion Raceway. Eagle Towing and Recovery, 24-hour towing service. We may doze, but we never close. 540-834-3500. Short track racing is the grassroots of motorsports. Pritt Motorsports has been racing on the local track scene for over 30 years. Sponsorship opportunities exist for next season. Call 703-618-5122 for more information. Pritt Motorsports fields cars in the U-Car, modified, and Dominion stocks. Racing is in their blood. To inquire about sponsorship opportunities with Pritt Motorsports, call 703-618-5122.
We are Pritt Motorsports.
Back with Al Tuning with Eagle Towing and Recovery here on Sports Etc. Mike Neville along with you. 540-834-3500, the number to call for Eagle Towing and Recovery. Now, we talked to Al about his business, but I'll tell you what, Al's got some stories from his NASCAR days. How'd you get involved with NASCAR, and who'd you get involved with?
Well, I was involved with NASCAR as a young child. My father was a mechanic for Junie Dunleavy Racing here out of Richmond. Back in the days of Dick Brooks, Jody Ridley.
Yep.
A lot of names that some of these viewers may not recognize right now.
Right.
Kenny Schrader, those guys that worked their way up. And I would hang out with at the racetrack with my dad. I'd go, pretty much every weekend whenever I could. I'd miss school. They'd take me out of school to go to Daytona for a week.
Right.
My dad was a mechanic and a chassis guy. My mom actually was a scorer. Back then it wasn't electronic scoring. Right. You actually had a scorecard, and every time the car went by, you had to write the number down. It was on that clock. We go way back in racing. And I know when you were speaking with Jimmy Pritt earlier, you were talking about Dale Earnhardt. Dale Earnhardt actually gave me my first paying job.
Really?
In racing.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize that, but back in the late 70s, early 80s, all the fans after the race, they'd open the gates, and all the fans could come down. The drivers would sign autographs. I would stand. Dale Earnhardt paid me $5 a race to stand beside him and hand him a postcard to autograph to give to the fans. So was it really a job? No, but it kind of was too for me because I'm 8, 9, 10 years old. So to me, it was kind of cool.
How do you think Dale Earnhardt would react to today's NASCAR?
He would probably be beating his head against the wall.
Would it have forced him to retire early, do you think? Because, he was such a maverick and such a rebel that I just can't see him putting up with the way the sport has gone.
I don't think the sport would have went that way if he was still been with us.
No, okay.
He was very instrumental in making a lot of changes in NASCAR. And I just don't think that he would have stood by peacefully and not raised a little
Right.
bit of Cain and made some waves there.
Well, the one thing that did happen with regard to, again, it's very unfortunate that Dale Earnhardt was killed in an accident or a crash that looked really harmless. I mean, I've seen a lot. He's been in a lot worse, but unfortunately but the safety devices that came out of his situation certainly has helped NASCAR.
They did. I was actually there at that race.
were you?
I was working with Robert Yates racing at the time.
Were you shocked
And
that-
I was there in Daytona when it happened. And
Were you shocked that when the news came
the
out?
entire world was
Yeah,
shocked.
yeah.
Really. It was, like you said, a very minor hit for Daytona.
Right.
But it's just the way it happened, from my understanding, and it's been controversy over the years. But I understand that his belts were loose, and the seat belt during the
Right.
impact may have cut the
Right.
artery in his
Yeah.
neck, and that's where it
Right.
bled to death. But
Exactly.
you're correct. A lot of the Earnhardt bar, they call it now, it comes straight down through the middle of the windshield.
Yeah.
That's where it came from.
Yeah, exactly.
Was Dale.
Right.
It was instrumental in that. The Hans devices and stuff now are more popular.
Right.
They're not mandated, but
Right.
they are
Right.
more popular. A lot of the drivers are looking at the head and neck
Yeah.
restraints and the containment seats and so
Right.
forth that we have in racing. A lot of it
Right.
came from the Earnhardt family, not just Dale,
Yeah.
but Dale Jr.
Yeah.
And a lot of the research and development that they've done at DEI.
Right. You mentioned you worked for Robert Yates, of course, and unfortunately we just lost Robert Yates.
Yeah.
Well, tell me about working with him. What was he like and so forth?
Robert was probably one of the nicest guys I ever worked with, and I've been in several teams
Right.
when I lived in Charlotte.
Right. Seemed to be very quiet,
He was very quiet. He was hands-on when he needed to be, but he
Right.
let his car chiefs and his crew chiefs pretty much run the show.
Which, when you think about successful coaches and other sports and so forth, that's why they're so successful. They know how to delegate and get out of the way.
That's right. And of course, Robert started out. He was one of the premier engine builders,
Right.
in the industry, and that's where he started out. He started out with Harry Ranier way back in the
Right.
day as an engine builder, and went on to his own
Right.
rights. And Robert was a great guy. It was a heck of a loss,
Right.
last
Yeah,
week when he
exactly.
passed away.
And it's funny, I kind of correlate the NASCAR back in the olden days to, there's a lot of a show called Family Reunions that Country Music has that Bill Anderson knows. And listening to those older stars talk about, riding in a car together to a gig or taking a bus together. And I'm going, Vince Gill was on, and he was actually crying because he says, my generation can't relate to that. And you're probably in the same situation with regard to, I'm sure that, there were times that you maybe rode with somebody or, going from race to race, where nowadays, because of airplanes, because of these modern
Right.
buses, you don't get that family feel.
Well, that's exactly right. I'm going to go back to, again, when I was a kid, when my dad was involved in it
Right.
heavily. With Dunleavy racing, everybody was a volunteer. And, my dad would work, he'd run the gas station and stuff. They'd work all weekend,
Yeah.
all week long. And Thursday night, Friday morning, he'd get in the car or a motor home. He had a motor home,
Yeah.
and we'd head to the racetrack.
Right.
And it was at everybody's own expense.
Right.
And back then, all of the teams would help each other. I know Jimmy was talking about the money that's involved in NASCAR now, and that's exactly what it's become. It's
Yeah.
become a business.
Yeah.
Back then, it was still a sport. It was fun. It was, and honestly, that's one of the reasons that I stepped away from NASCAR and actually had stepped back into the ARCA series for a while, because it was that friendship. That
Right.
still everybody wanted to work together. It didn't matter if you had a Chevrolet or a Ford.
Yeah.
If you had a problem, everybody worked together to help you get back
Right.
on the
Exactly.
track.
And I think that's what made it so appealing when I was first got involved as far as covering NASCAR and watching NASCAR, is because from that exactly, because I'd be down in the pits in Richmond, I would see it happen, but then of course it so slowly faded away, and it's become so sterile, I guess is the word I like to use, because it's so robotic.
Well, when you get to the level of the Truck Series, the Xfinity Series, the Monster Energy Series now, the sponsors demand so
Yeah.
much
Yeah.
because they're putting so much into it.
Right. Exactly.
That it has to be a business now.
Right. I want to get to one more thing before we wrap up. This modified car that Ryan's going to be driving full time next year. You were excited because something to do with the wheels. You said you relate better to this than the U car. Can you kind of expound on that a little bit?
Oh yeah. This is more of a specialized chassis. I really didn't have intentions of getting involved into this at the level we did.
Right.
Jimmy and I were friends, and before the season last year, I went to Dominion with him and Ryan and John, and we kind of tested. And we were just hanging out, talking.
Right.
And one thing led to another, and we ended up sponsoring Ryan and helping John. And he did mention that I had talked to Ryan. Ryan and I walked the track. We probably walked 20 miles around that racetrack at Dominion, and we worked on different things. Because I worked with Petty Enterprise at the Petty Driving School. I worked with Dale Jarrett at the Dale Jarrett Racing School. I was instructors there.
Name dropper.
So I do have experience as well as my own driving from years ago.
Right.
So it did help, and like we were talking about when Ryan won the first race, we looked at each other and went, well, I guess we got to run another one now. And it just went from there.
Right.
But I told Ryan and Jimmy and everybody from day one that we got involved. That's a front wheel drive. Right. I don't know the first thing about a front wheel drive race car.
Yeah.
But yeah, when Chris Nellings gave us the opportunity with this modified here, I told Ryan, I said, now we're into more what I understand.
Right.
It's a tube chassis. You can adjust things on it. It's rear wheel drive. So yeah, it's more comfortable for me.
Right. Yeah, I knew you were excited because we were talking when you got this. So
I'm looking forward to next season. It's been a trying, the 4 races that we've run been trying for us. It's a big adjustment for Ryan to go from the U car to modified. And honestly, as long as I've been out of the trenches, it's a big adjustment for me to get back into it.
Exactly.
But we're excited about it and glad to have the opportunity.
Right. Well, I know Pritt Motorsports appreciates your sponsorship, helping out with them, and in all facets of the racing. And I appreciate your sponsorship as well, so we can do these interviews and so forth.
We appreciate it.
It's great seeing you.
You too.
Eagle Towing and Recovery, 540-834-3500 if you need a tow. This is the guy you want to talk to, Al Tuning with Eagle Towing and Recovery. Al, once again, thanks for the time.
Thank you.
All right, that's going to wrap up this edition of Sports Etc. We thank you for watching. Have a great night, everybody.